So in this video, um, kind of what I want to talk about today is this idea of pursuing a purpose bigger than everything that's around you, right? So I've said it in a previous video, but I don't necessarily follow a script in trying to maintain authenticity, to self and documenting this journey. I usually, write some things down in a notes app. And I think for this video, I'll kind of just read kind of how I go through, the process of formulating a video from thought to creation. So I have written down here, pursue a purpose or goal greater than your habits, your surroundings, and yourself, and the rest will have no choice but to follow. You also gain more momentum, motivation, and discipline to follow through on sub-goals. And I think that's a nice little snippet, and that takes me back to all the things that I'm thinking about, in terms of my thoughts around this topic. And I have one thing that's like relevant to me right now that I feel is relevant to this topic. So a lot of the goals that I have, things that I want to do for myself, they're not necessarily things that, I saw growing up in people, that I looked up to, or people that I, like family members or people that I knew. A lot of the things that I was interested in, these were things that maybe I only saw on TV, or only saw celebrities do, or just, popular individuals in the media. And one relevant example is, I ran a half marathon last November, like last fall. And, obviously, well, not obviously, but no one in my family, in my immediate family, is big into fitness. No one's really big into, pushing their body to the limits in those different kinds of ways. And ultimately, I have the goal of becoming like a triathlete, participating in a race that involves, running, swimming, and cycling. So I've kind of just working my way up. I've done a half marathon. I completed one under 2 hours. I think it was a 9:02 pace per mile. And a half marathon is about 13.1 miles. And my next goal for this upcoming November, I'm still kind of on the fence, but I think I've started training already, and I'm on like week 2 of this plan that I'm following. And I feel like this is a good example of kind of what I'm talking about. In setting the goal of running a marathon, obviously, in order to complete that goal, there are certain requirements, certain things you have to do, that you have to get right in your life to necessarily accomplish that goal. First being, you have to actually run and build, an aerobic base to be able to accomplish such a demanding task as, running a marathon. Number 2 is, nutrition. Number 3 is sleep. So in setting this larger goal, it forces me to get these other areas in my life on track so that I can complete this goal. In preparing myself and my body and mind and spirit for this goal, I end up cleaning up so many other areas of my life just so that I can prepare to run 26 miles. You become better with managing your time. You start to care more about, the things that you put in your body so that you can have a good performance, not just for race day, but also for your training that you do, on a weekly basis. And just looking back on some of the things that I mentioned, and in pursuing a goal such as this, me pursuing to do a marathon, these are not things that, I see people in my family or even just my immediate circle do. And I feel like if you want to put yourself in a position, to get much farther than what you've been brought up to know and understand, what you've seen in your surroundings, then a goal like that is going to require you to do things you've never seen or done before. And I feel like you can continue to repeat that process. Like it can be a very tiered system, a very tiered way to see progression in your own life. And I believe this can apply to anything. Right now, I'm just applying it to the purposes of running a marathon. But let's say I finished a marathon and I set an even higher goal. Let's say, not that I'm going to do this, but the next step being like, a half Ironman race, which involves, cycling, running, and swimming. A much more demanding task. It's going to require me to do much more than I did training for the marathon. It's going to require so much more thinking, so much more training, so much more preparation. And it'll cause all these other areas in my life to have to be better to meet this task. And in kind of switching the narrative, I think, this goal can be applied to anything. It can be applied to saving money. It can be applied to, wanting to get a promotion, wanting to get a better job. Once you set these goals, you're going to look for ways to, add things to your life, meet people. You're going to look for so many different type of ways to think about how you can even get yourself within a reaching grasp of that goal, right? And I think that in of itself is a huge benefit. Let's say I never, I DNF the marathon. I do not finish. Obviously, finishing would be, the best result of, everything that I've done to prepare. But even if you don't finish, I think you still have to look at, just how changed of a person you are, having even attempted. Even to attempt is to suggest that you've grown into a different person. You've grown past who you used to be. Even an attempt, is better than not setting the goal. So step one is obviously, set before yourself some actual goals, some goals that terrify you, goals that you can't conceive of because it's never been, exemplified in your life. It's never been, no one's ever, made it known to you that this is a thing that can be possible. Not only with setting a goal that's bigger than yourself and everything you've ever seen, not only does it help you, but it helps those around you. It puts you in a position to be, the example that, you never got to see. And I think that in itself is just as powerful. And I want to encourage anyone who's listening to this, to set before yourself goals that terrify you, to set before yourself things that you can't even imagine, that if someone said that you did right this moment, you'd be so shocked. You'd wonder, how did I do that? And I think that's the true meaning of a goal. If you're setting a goal that you can accomplish, it's not really a goal. I think it's more so a thing you just haven't done yet. A goal is outside of the realms of normal thinking. Like, for example, me getting a job in the architecture field. It's definitely a goal, but I feel like it was always going to be a natural progression of this career path that I'm following. But let's say I set a goal of, say something crazy. Not only in wanting to become an architect, I document this journey on YouTube and Instagram and amass a following of over 1 million followers. Like, in documenting the journey. Now that is crazy and not something I could imagine. But I think a lot of times I want to say to myself, but why not? Why not imagine the impossible? Why not imagine something that's far out of the realm of what I normally do? And I think that's the beauty of, what I've been trying to communicate. It's just that pursue a purpose bigger than anything you've ever seen, witnessed, or imagined. And I think that is the first step. Thank you.